Welcome. Hello everybody. I make that about 12:25. Thank you for joining me on this Thursday lunchtime. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about grooves and improvisation within a groove. And I just spent, 3.5 minutes? I just spent the last 3.5 minutes improvising within a groove and exploring what I could do and what I could find within that general sort of halftime thing that was happening. And I'm then now going to do my best to talk about my approach to that and some thoughts and demonstrations and approaches so that you can do that too in your own way, in your own style, in your own grooves. So I'm not going to linger. Let's get straight on. Grooves. What do we know about grooves and what do we know about improvisation? Because the two are often linked. We don't want to prescribe a pattern all the time. We can come up with any sort of complex patterns for when we want to play a groove, but a pattern can be quite limiting. We instead want to focus on an overall feel, an overall theme, which gives us the freedom to improvise within that. So that's really what I'm all about. I'm easily bored. I like to improvise. I like to have a bit of freedom within the groove. So I mentioned a theme. I mentioned an overall feel. What does that mean? Well, what I was just playing with could be simply described as a halftime groove. A halftime has its downbeat on beat 3 of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. That's the basic sort of thing that I was working with there. Contrast that to our normal common time groove. 8th notes on the hi-hat, quarter notes on the bass and the snare. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to keep the hi-hat the same, but we're going to transition into a 1 and 3. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and that gives us our basic halftime groove. And this is our starting point, right? Everything we play has to serve this. Now you can start to hear already, I'm improvising. That bass drum is starting to stray and play some rhythmic figures. But that downbeat on beat 3, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, is anchoring everything. And this is a really interesting point, right from the off. Because I've been playing this halftime groove, you are all expecting it. So I don't need to do much for you to know that that downbeat was coming, right? Bernard Purdie was great at this sort of thing. Set up the groove and let your expectation do the rest. Now, once that expectation is set, we've got this halftime groove happening. I'm free to do essentially what I like with that bass drum, because this hi-hat and snare drum are serving the groove, the expectations. That's not to say anything I play on the bass drum is necessarily going to sound good, but it gives me the opportunity to explore a little bit. You can do what you like with it, because that beat 3 on the downbeat is holding us in place. Now from here, I can simplify again back to our basic groove, and we can start thinking about our drumming vocabulary, the sound sources at our disposal to decorate this. A simple open hi-hat, a crash cymbal. They add a bit of colour, but it's not because that breaks the groove. Instead, I'm using that crash cymbal, I'm using that open hi-hat to emphasize, to accent that groove. And don't forget, a crash cymbal, especially one as beautiful as this new Master Series Bosphorus that I'm playing for the first time ever, has got lots of different sounds within it, so I don't have to crash it. I can get a slightly different sound on the bell, Likewise on this ride over here. Notice everything I'm doing is within the confines of this half-time groove at this point. This all counts as improvisation. I've not planned any of this. I've not written it out beforehand. I'm utilizing the tools that are available to me on the drum kit and the tools that are available to me as part of my drumming vocabulary. So let's be a little bit more specific now. We can start bringing in some 16th notes on this hi-hat. We don't have to do it all the time. And that hi-hat 16th note pattern can work with that bass drum improvisation. And then the expectation takes care of the rest. You knew that downbeat was coming on beat 3, right? Now, what's happening on this left hand? Those ghost notes are starting to fill in the gaps. Now, at this stage, it sounds fancy, but that's nothing more than a single stroke roll, right? The hi-hats are keeping time on the hi-hats keeping time with these 8th notes, and that left hand can just fill in the gaps as 16th notes. And it provides a bit of texture. And as long as I let that downbeat do all the work for me, I can just keep those ghost notes coming. And if I've got the ability, if I've got the facility in that left hand, I can turn some of those ghost notes into diddles. Or maybe a buzz. So we've got 3 elements working together here. We've got the bass drum, the snare drum, and the hi-hat. I would contest at this stage the most important element is that snare drum because of the downbeat we've got on beat 3 of the bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Once I've established that, I don't need anything else to keep the groove going. 1, 2, 3, 4. Which frees up my bass drum and my hi-hat to decorate. So here's our groove. And as I said, 3 main elements to decorate. So hi-hat, open hi-hat, 16ths. Ghost notes on the left hand. And that bass drum, they all start to work together that snare drum hasn't strayed from that downbeat yet. And then if I want a change of scenery, I'm off over here onto the ride cymbal, but the groove is still the same. And this has the added benefit of freeing up this left foot. And again, if you've got the facility there, if you've got the ability with that left foot, you can improvise with that left foot just as much as you can with any of the other elements. Sorry, I'm just going to raise this stand a little bit so I'm not leaning down all the time. That'll do. So we're over here now. We've taken a change of scenery, moved across to the ride cymbal. I love ride cymbals, if you didn't know already. We've got the bell, we've got the body. That gives us an immense amount of material to diversify with, to decorate the groove with, right? Because if I just take it on the body of the cymbal, it's fine. But we've got this beautiful bell at our disposal that I'm going to use on the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if I want to bring in my 16th note, I can use it. I can use them to decorate that bell. So again, these elements combine to just decorate that main pulse. So I've got ghost notes on the left hand, 16th notes between the body and the bell of the ride cymbal on the right hand. At the moment, my hi-hat is just on 2 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That bass drum is providing the main sort of drive. Okay, now what's going on there? We can start to get a little bit more carried away now. We can start to get a little bit more adventurous when we start subverting the expectation on that downbeat. I've talked about how once you establish the groove, it creates the expectation. So if I do this, you're all hearing it, even though I don't need to play it, right? So that expectation is established straight away. We can start to have a bit of fun with that by subverting that expectation, by moving it, by disguising it, by teeing it up and then not paying off, not resolving. There are lots of different devices, rhythmic devices, musical devices available to us once we have that established expectation. So, I can displace. Displacement is simply moving to a different part of the bar. So I'm just moving by an 8th note. 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and. Rather than it being on that 3, 1, 2, and 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and. Right, having a bit of fun with that by displacing that downbeat accent because it brings the attention straight back. Okay, I was expecting a downbeat there on beat 3 of the bar. That expectation has been subverted, and it's interesting. It's interesting to listen to, and it creates a certain pull or push based on how you want that groove to feel. If I'm bringing that groove, if I'm bringing that downbeat forwards all the time, it kind of increases the tension. Whereas if I'm delaying that downbeat all the time, it still creates tension, but it's in a stretch instead because that downbeat is coming later than when we expected it. Now, I went into a little phrase a moment ago that was something like this. Something like that. Sorry. So that's exactly what I was just talking about. I'm using a simple phrase that's essentially right, left, left. Accent on the right hand, ghost notes on the left hand with a bass drum accenting the bell. Basically just that. But I'm feeling that as 16th notes. 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a, 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. And because that rides over the top of where you expect that downbeat to come, again, we're building this sense of tension, this sense of delay. And I'm going over the bar line and I'm skipping the first downbeat and I'm waiting for the downbeat on the second bar. So let me show you what I mean. We've got that expectation in place now. This beat 3 downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Now when I begin that phrase, we have to count it to make sure we hit the second downbeat. 1, 2. 1, 2. Counting it and playing it's really hard, so let me do it in 16th note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1. Just about. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. See, I'm skipping the first 3 and coming back in on the second 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Man, counting that and playing it's really tough. So while you're listening to this, keep hearing 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And it gives us that subverted expectation, right? Now, we've got a bit of interplay going on. We've got a little bit more intricate interplay going on now between that right hand over here, the bass drum, and these ghost notes. Now, it's quite difficult and not necessarily useful for you guys for me to explain exactly the sticking of every individual pattern there, but these are loosely paradiddle based, okay? If you think about the paradiddle family of rudiments, the paradiddle, the inverted paradiddle, reverse paradiddle, and let's include the inverted double stroke roll as well, right, left, right, left, right, all of these rudiments create some really nice interplay, some really nice interaction between the ride cymbal or the hi-hat and the snare drum. So, back to our groove. Let's first of all just experiment what playing 16th note paradiddles will do to this groove. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a... sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Now we've got a problem here. That beat 3 ends up on the right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we could always just bring that right hand down and listen to what listen to that lovely bell pattern that creates. I'm just going to spend a minute and get a little bit more comfortable with that. That's a bit awkward. Now, what I went in there instead at the end, I don't know if you spotted it, I went from a normal paradiddle to a triple paradiddle. Right, left, right, left, right, left, right, right. That takes up 2 beats of the bar, which means I'm primed and ready for that 3rd beat of the bar. 1 E and 2 E and left, right, left, right, left, right, left, left. As I said, we're considering the paradiddle family of rudiments here. Ready-made bell pattern, ready-made ghost notes, right? So that further examples of using that family of rudiments to build up some interplay between the hands. As I said, it wouldn't necessarily be the most productive use of our time for me to go through every individual little thing that was going on there. Suffice it to say, it all comes back to that downbeat on beat 3 of the bar. So once we've got that established, everyone listening to this, your audience are expecting that every time. So you can fill the space between that. However you like, as long as you're hitting that downbeat. Now if you want a little change of pace, we can bring in that cross stick and drop the dynamics right down. Now something I was just playing with there, I don't know if you spotted it at the beginning. You can see it up in this camera in the corner. That left stick is actually hitting the rim of tom 2 with the butt of the stick resting on the snare. I can do it on the first tom or just the snare. And you get 3 different tones. Regardless, having this cross stick gives us a nice drop in intensity. So if you're dropping the intensity, it's nice to simplify. And now we've got a kind of new blank canvas that we've created for ourselves. The groove is still taken care of. So I'm now free to explore some ideas. Do I want to explore that bass drum? Or is that a little bit too heavy for this? So what if instead I start thinking a bit more jazzy and start exploring that left foot? Bit of syncopation on the left hand. Sorry, every time I talk I throw myself off a little bit. What about if we started exploring ghost note applications? Those 16th notes are back. Try and keep the dynamics down. Just exploring some interplay between the hands, but with this new cross stick position, right? Contrast. Back to the back to the main snare, downbeat. Everything I'm doing and back to where we started. Everything that I'm doing there is really following 2 main principles. Decorate the main groove, which is this. Decorate that with your vocabulary, with the sound sources at your disposal. And within that, subverting or playing with or manipulating the expectation of that downbeat. You all knew it was coming. Now, when you do start to get a little bit more adventurous, you've got to remember where you are. There's nothing worse than seeing a drummer start improvising and soloing within a nice fat groove, only for them to get their downbeat in the wrong place when they come back. The whole point of this, as I said, we're within a groove here. This is not a solo in the traditional sense of the term. This is improvisation within the confines of the groove. But of course, we don't want it to feel confined. We want it to feel liberating. We want it to feel fun and interesting, and of course, groovy and musical. So let's move on now to, sorry, this stand is sinking down as I'm talking. That's better. Let's move on to a slightly different groove now, because I don't know about you, I've probably had enough after half an hour of that half time. And let's be a little bit more adventurous, shall we? Let's go to an odd time now, and we can demonstrate the same principles but in a different time signature. Let's go into 3. I like 3. So let's start from the very beginning, recapping what we've discussed so far. Excuse me for 1 minute. So starting from the beginning, we need a groove. We need a bass line. We need that underlying pulse, which we are then going to decorate and subvert with the expectations. 3, right? 1 to 2 and a 3 and a 1 and a 2 and a 3. Okay, we want to make sure we've got our basic pulse. So let's simplify that. Let's take it down to just the 1 and the 3. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and yeah, let's go with that one. We've got that basic expectation forming now as this pulse becomes more familiar. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So we can start applying the same tools, the same concepts as we did before. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Just using that bass drum now. Using that bass drum to kind of tee up that downbeat on the 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. You can be as adventurous as you like with it, as long as it serves the groove. I think I went back into 4 there, excuse me. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So now, firmly embedded in this new groove, we can start applying those same principles. What about some 16ths on the hi-hat? Some ghost notes. Bit of syncopation to subvert. 1, 2, 3. The expectation. Same deal as before, same phrase. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's go a little bit more adventurous now. That was a bit boring. Let's go back over to... Should we try 7? Let's try 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, simplify. What's the basic pulse? Da, dun, 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 da. So we're establishing that expectation, right? So at this stage, I'm familiarizing myself with the pulse I've created. I'm starting exploring some bass drum ideas and trying to keep that snare drum consistent to establish both for myself and the audience the expectation of where those downbeats come. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2. So, once we've got that expectation established again, we can start exploring what we can do on the hi-hat. Playing over the bar line, for example. Add 16. Ghost notes. Paradiddle. Now my hi-hat is free on that left foot. And you can start to see here the same principles are being applied, regardless of the groove I'm playing. Because we can only do, really, 2 things. We can play within the confines of the groove, and we can apply the vocabulary that's available to us, right? The tools that are available to us. I can't play something that I've not practiced and worked on and incorporated. Neither can you, neither can anybody. We can only use the tools that are available to us. So we have to use the groove, the pulse we've created, to dictate how and where and when and in what manner we apply those tools, right? So if we think one of those tools might be just paradiddles, right? Between the hands. If we're familiar with that little piece of vocabulary, right, we know that we are comfortable executing paradiddles using ghost notes and accents to create a sort of groove interplay between the cymbal and the snare. Right, let's say we've got that. We've practiced it. We know how to use it. It comes out quite often. We need to use the groove we've created to decide whether or not that is appropriate and how we want to use that. If I'm in the 7, right, that we were just playing. Well, if I'm sitting there thinking, how do I get the paradiddles in here? Okay, I can't get it in the second half of the bar because that downbeat is coming in and disrupting it, but I can get them in the first half of the bar. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3. Paradiddle, paradiddle, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, I'm now discovering how I can apply this tool, this piece of vocabulary, to the context to serve that groove. And once I've done that, is it actually serving the groove? Well, yes, I think so, because that snare drum is undisturbed. That downbeat is still happening. We're just adding a little bit of colour, a bit of flavour between the hi-hat and the snare drum. Okay. Likewise, we might be in something completely different, like we might be in a sort of Latin. I don't know, something like this. And we've got to think, okay, is that paradiddle applicable? Okay, we can do it 8th notes. And we get a nice bell pattern. Is it applicable as 16th note? Well, yeah, kind of, but it creates a double time. But it does give an interesting bell pattern. But do we want a double time feel? Not necessarily. Okay, I'm sitting on 8th note paradiddles here in this Latin thing. What if I try a different rudiment? Inverted paradiddles. Different cross stick pattern, different bell pattern. Which do I prefer? Which do I want? But again, these are for you to decide as you find yourself within that scenario, in that context, as long as you're following those two basic principles. We're trying to serve the groove, to decorate the groove, to emphasize the rhythm of that groove. And then we're trying to subvert expectations, or at least play with the expectations. This is why when you see drummers soloing, and it's this sort of thing. You've got to be really careful with that. I have nothing against that whatsoever, and I'm guilty of it myself sometimes, but the problem with that, if it's a free-form solo, right, there's no expectation. There's no groove to decorate. You take someone like Dave Weckl, and one thing you will notice about Dave Weckl when he solos is that this hi-hat is an absolute constant. And I believe it or not, this sounds like a horrible name drop, but I was actually talking to Dave Weckl just a few weeks ago on a conference call, and he said exactly the same thing to me. If you've got that hi-hat referencing the groove, referencing the beat, that's keeping time. It frees you up to phrase because that is playing the part of the expectation, right? So no matter how out there Mr. Weckl, Dave, first name terms, no matter how far out there Dave Weckl goes with his solo phrasing, there is something anchoring the time, something providing that expectation, free-form soloing is tricky for that very detail, right? If I'm here, I've got to go purely based on the sound I'm generating because you as the listener have no expectation. Like, what is he playing? What's coming next? I have no idea. Whereas if we start from here, straight away there's an expectation. And if I just flat out ignore that expectation, you're breaking the groove and you've just made your audience go, oh, well, that was weird. So I've probably said, what time are we looking at? 42 minutes. I've got to go and have some lunch. I didn't expect 42 minutes. So I've probably said everything I wanted to say. Think about those things, right? When you're improvising, when you're grooving, they are your main concerns. Your listener, and you've got to take into account your listener. They are expecting a groove. That's not to say you always have to play grooves on the drums, of course not. But when you are grooving, this whole workshop is about grooving, right? When you are grooving and you start with a groove, anybody listening to this is going, oh, okay, yeah, I'm into this. This sounds cool. So if you break that, there's going to be a look of bemusement about what on earth just happened because there's meant to be a groove going on. Whereas if you are able to play, if you're able to somehow incorporate that same intensity, your chops or whatever you're using, into your groove, you're going to get a far different reaction because it'll bring a smile to somebody's face because it's decorating the intention, the expectation that's already there. So I'm probably going to play for a few minutes now. I've said everything I've wanted to say. So thank you guys for joining me today. Before I finish, for those of you that are interested in what I do, check out my website linked in the description below. Video lessons, educational books, and things like that. I'd be happy to chat with you guys on various video conferencing platforms if you wanted a lesson or to discuss anything drum related. For those of you that like what I do, please consider Patreon to support this channel and to keep it going. Linear Freedom is back in stock now, so there are only a few copies left already, so get on that if you want a copy. And I am thinking of doing a video on some Bosphorus cymbal crash comparisons, because I've now got 3 beautiful crash cymbals from Bosphorus, and my syncopation series video went down quite well, so I might do a crash cymbal comparison shortly. I believe my next live stream will be Saturday night, looking at some drum solo concepts, but please be sure to check up for my notifications, because I will schedule it in advance, and sometimes, like today, I can fit one in last minute. Anyway, that's all for now. I'm gonna groove for a few minutes, just because I'm in the mood, and then I'm going to end it and go and get some lunch. But thank you guys for watching. Keep in touch. Stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.